Hi, welcome everyone, and today I have with me in the studio the very pretty Wendy Low. She's a candidate with PSP, and she has kindly stepped forward today to share with us a little bit more about Wendy the person. So she's willing to share some of her personal information with us, and I believe you have also prepared some photos, right?
Yeah.
So we will look at your photos, and we'll talk about some of the things. So Wendy, I'm just curious, which part of Singapore did you grow up in?
Many different parts of Singapore, actually.
many parts of maybe
Yeah,
from your childhood when you were born?
I grew up with my maternal grandmother. So that's at the Lower Delta Road, behind the current Tiong Bahru Plaza.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's where you grew up. Until what age then you moved?
Before primary one. So then from primary one onwards, because of schooling, I moved to my mom's place at Clementi.
Oh.
So because of her work, it used to be that she would play with my grandma for most of the weekdays, then she'll see me on the weekends.
Oh,
Then
okay.
from primary school onwards, that's when I went back to live with her and my dad.
I see.
Yeah.
So, you have any siblings or?
Yeah, my brother, my younger brother.
Younger brother. So
Yeah.
both of you were with Amma?
No, so we had this very interesting arrangement. My little brother would be with a nanny. Because this was the era before they had domestic helpers.
Oh, right.
So they had to make the whole family support. So for me, it's mainly
You were
with my
Amma?
pawpaw.
Pawpaw,
My
okay,
pawpaw.
and
Then my
your brother?
brother would be with a nanny,
nanny.
who is also a neighbor in Clementi.
Oh.
So for him, he grew up in the Clementi side.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
whereas I was the Tiong Bahru kid.
Then after, Tiong Bahru. Oh, the way she says like a Paikia like that.
Tiong Bahru kid. But it's that backdrop with Bukit Ho Swee, and it used to be a rougher neighborhood.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
the way
I'm
you
the
said
Tiong
it,
Bahru
like,
kid.
like it's a badge you carry, no?
With pride, with a lot of pride, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it's good memories. So after that, for primary school, you went back to mom. I mean, you stay with
To my
mom,
mom and dad in Clementi.
Okay.
My primary school years were in Clementi.
Which school did you go to for your primary school?
Henry Park Primary.
Henry Park. Is that the one at Holland Grove?
Yeah, Jalita Cold Storage
Jelita
behind.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It used to be next
That's quite
to...
near to where Dr. Tan is staying,
Yes, so destiny,
Yeah.
has a full cycle. Yeah, I used
Right.
to be there. And actually there's a little story because my mom wanted very much for me to go to Raffles Girls Primary. And there was a bit of a balloting, and sadly she couldn't get me in. So last time Henry Park was still not as well known as it is now. So that was like a second choice. But a lot of fun. Because Henry Park was a co-ed school, so we had very competitive sports with the boys. So like for example, your hopscotch, right? During recess, we'll run out. So we'll play hopscotch, we'll play running around the school field. And because we shared a school field with Raffles Girls Primary, so they had this prefect system where they always try and stop the Henry Park kids from going over. So it became like a mini race chasing around the Raffles Girls Primary prefect. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, from primary then, your secondary, where did you go to? Which school?
Then my family shifted again. We moved to Katong side.
Wow, so
Yeah.
no wonder you said you're all over the place.
Yeah, so I know Singapore quite well. I know Singapore quite well. So then, I was
from
a
Clementi, you went over to the
so then I became a Katong girl.
Oh, you went to a convent.
That's what most people thought, but I was actually quite loyal to my school, which is River Valley High. So Sec 1 and Sec 2, because I was still on the Clementi side, I went to River Valley High School. Then because Sec 3, that's when you're supposed to be streamed into your different subjects. I decided to stay on with all my classmates. So every day I traveled like 1 hour by bus. I still remember bus number 30. Yeah. So the journey is I'll leave the house at around 5:30 a.m. And there's this road that I have to walk through which had a crazy dog from a neighbor.
Crazy dog.
So the neighbor will always bark at me for like 5 minutes. Then I have to find a way to siam the dog. And take the bus at this bus stop, number 30, journey across the island through Harbourfront and all of that. And yeah.
Oh, it's quite a journey. I mean,
It
you
is,
have to
it
wake
is,
up
it
at,
is.
I mean, you have to take the first, almost the first
Almost
bus,
the first
right?
bus, yeah.
And that means you have to wake up at 4:45?
Around
5?
5.
Yeah?
Around 5.
Wow. And that's like
so,
for 2 years of your life you had to do that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can understand because sometimes when you already bonded with your friends in Sec 1, Sec 2, right? And then suddenly just because your parents moved and then you don't you rather sacrifice, right, and take that thing than to leave all your friends behind. And oh wow.
But later on in the Pak Tor days, it was nice because then the guy can send you on a long bus right back home. So it's got its pros and cons. And so those are fun days.
After River Valley, then you did JC or Poly or what?
Yeah, so being the East, the neighborhood choice was Victoria JC.
Also even to Victoria JC. And then after that, you went to uni, and that's how you became a lawyer. Being a lawyer, was it something you always wanted to do?
No, I actually wanted to study Vietnamese. But there are two stories. One, I wanted to study Russian and do economics in London.
Oh.
Yeah. But the consolation story I told my mom is that I'm a genius, right? So I did very well for my special papers. Econs, I got S, and then I got an A for my geography. But my A-level results were not so great. So the scholarships were kind of competitive, and I didn't quite make the mark to get an overseas scholarship.
But you had a local scholarship.
So then I decided, okay, what's my next best choice? And I'll share a little bit more, but because I really love to travel, back then I thought that if I pick up a foreign language, that might put me in a better state to get into Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then I can travel more in my work.
A diplomat or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But the logical side of me was, okay, maybe my grades were still okay. Maybe I should try law and see what happens. So I still remember on the day of the written exam, it was partly deliberate, but partly by chance. I was half an hour late for the papers.
Half an hour late?
I was half an hour late for the papers. So I told myself
that... They still allow you to take it? I mean, though you're half an hour late?
I don't know, you can call it destiny. So I told myself that, okay, maybe that's the clear sign that I should be doing Vietnamese and become like a foreign diplomat, right? But it turned out that despite being half an hour late, I still got into law school. So I made that choice.
So maybe, as you say, that's destiny. Can we maybe see what are some of the pictures you have brought to share with us?
Yeah.
Oh, that's you!
That's me.
Wow, how old were you then?
Maybe 2 or 3. So this was the phase when I'm still growing up. This was the iconic shot that all my family remembers me by. They used to call me what? Bakuching. It means like very big eyes. I don't know what's the Malay term for it. Very big eyes. And last time there wasn't so many toys. So my aunt remembers that I used to love to go to her dressing table and dig out her little jewelry. So that's why you see me with the very little girl growing up face.
Yeah, you still had the earrings on, so you were quite vain already, like at that age. Good for you.
Back then, now I'm a very good girl.
Vain doesn't mean you're a bad girl, okay? It means you are just enhancing your feminine assets. And your face was a little bit more rounded, but now it's a bit more tsiam, as they say, huh?
So my baby fats. Back then, my baby fats.
Okay, let's look at another picture that's coming. And this picture is?
Mom and dad.
Oh, mom and dad.
So my dad was a businessman. He was a textile trader, so ran his small little business. And my mom was an accountant. So in that sense, I grew up in that background where dad had his ups and downs as a small business owner. The earlier parts were really good. So I remember that he used to come back from Japan and he would buy all these like really nicely wrapped sweets because the Japanese are very intricate in their packaging. So as a little child, you're always looking forward to your dad coming back from his overseas trips with all these little treats. Yes. So those were the really good days, maybe in the early 80s.
Now seeing your mom's picture and looking at your baby picture just now, right? You really look more like your mom than seem to be like
the controversy continues within the family. Some things, half the family thinks there's a bit more of a dad feature, and but most think
that baby photo they showed just now, it looks more like. Seems to resemble more like mommy, the one where earlier on the picture you saw. Okay. So mom and dad are semi-retired, or are they still actively working?
My dad passed away 6 years ago due to cancer. Yeah, and my mom, she's mainly a housewife now. Very active with her Buddhist studies.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So she's your mom, but is she on her own, staying on her own, or staying with you or your brother? Or
So she was staying on her own after my brother got married and moved out.
Oh, okay,
So
okay. I'm sure you all visit her very regularly, lah.
on weekends.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, wonderful. Let's look at the next picture you have shared with us, and this is, who's this?
So on the bigger photo, that's my pawpaw. My
The one that you grew up with when you were a baby.
Yeah,
right.
So that's one of the happier
in the lower
pictures.
Delta, okay.
And below you can see the low 4-story flats. So those are the old HDB blocks
At
that
the
you
lower Delta area
see.
near
Correct.
the Tiong Bahru Plaza
So it's a
there.
bit like the Dakota Crescent
Yes.
type of heritage.
Correct.
Very very big rooms. I still remember it. And
Is your pawpaw still around?
no, she also passed away at least 15 odd years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So
so like.
the one up there.
So then that's my dad's side, my paternal grandfather and grandmother who are also no longer around. That's me as a baby.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're the baby or the baby?
I'm the baby.
Oh. Goodness.
So I had a bit of a privilege because of my mom's side especially. I was the first grandchild. So all the aunties and uncles doted on me.
More doted on.
Yes. So I had lots of playmates and very good memories growing up.
So you had a good memories during your childhood, huh?
Yeah.
And the one at the bottom, that is with who? With mom?
My mom's younger sister.
Oh, your auntie.
Yeah,
Oh,
who is
okay.
still very close to us. So my mom lives next block to her.
That's your auntie.
So very closely knit family.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful, huh? It's something to be treasured, huh? That kind of family bonding and keeping close. Because now these people so busy, no
Correct.
time, no time.
Correct.
Okay, what is the next picture you have coming up for us?
So
That's you graduating from kindergarten. Wow, you are a performer already.
it's interesting because this was maybe like K2 where I was in Shipby kindergarten. So behind Holland Village Shopping Centre, there used to be this stretch of like kindergarten, which is now all converted to restaurants. So I used to be there. So I don't know why I was chosen to give the graduation speech, even as a little kid. Maybe, but I was also always getting punished, right? So when I went to primary school, they used to have these long wooden rulers, if you recall.
Yeah.
So I always get like hit on by my knuckle. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. That was capital punishment, no?
Now you'll be illegal, right?
Yeah,
but back then they always had that wooden ruler on the chalkboard.
Yeah, they were allowed to. When you get one the spelling you get one wrong, they get hit a few times.
Last time they were more robust as teachers. I still remember because my brother was in the same primary school as me. So when he didn't do his homework, I would be called to his class.
Oh.
And I still remember.
You receive punishment on his behalf?
No. So it would be. I'll be like the surrogate parent, and the teacher will say, "Oh, why your brother didn't do homework?" And I was remember one incident, whether it's him or maybe his classmate, the exercise book got thrown out of the classroom and ended in the school pond below. Yeah, so it was a very different educational system.
Right. And what about the one in what you were all holding some trophies or something?
Yeah, so now looking back, this was already secondary school. I took part in school debates. I was the best speaker for my year.
So no wonder you'd be a lawyer lah. Wow, best debater.
But when you're growing up, you just did things for fun, I think.
Right,
so it's now that we're a bit of age and you look back, then certain events probably made sense.
Oh, interesting. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's see what's the next picture. Who's this? Oh, are you a girl guide or what?
Yes.
That's you in the girl guide uniform, right?
That's me in a girl guide uniform.
Okay.
Still with quite a round face, I think.
No lah, okay. And that was a good pal of yours?
So one of the first exchange student I hosted, she was a Taiwanese. So I showed her around in school, brought her along for ECAs. That's why we took a photo together. So I've been a brownie since primary school, and then later on I was a girl guide in secondary.
Is that when you say brownie, I heard of them, right? Is that the
not the
primary
cookie
school version? Yeah, I know lah.
Yeah.
So was the brownie is just like Dr. Tan. When I did interview him, he said he was a cup, so like cup with the primary school version of the Scouts. And then when they go secondary, then it becomes Scouts, and then after that they become Rover or something. So
something like that.
brownies is
The pre-secondary school
pre-secondary of the Girl
version
Guides,
of the Girl Guides.
Oh, so it's a natural progression. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So that was your ECA at that time in school,
Yeah,
joining a
mostly.
uniform group, right?
Mostly.
Oh, lovely. Well, let's see what's the next photo you have here. Okay, what's the next picture? Oh, wow. Where is this?
Yeah, so
Looks like you're overseas.
So I think that got me really interested in that whole exchange experience of hosting foreign students as well as going overseas. So that was a period when I was doing Japanese as a third language in school.
Oh, 日本人ですか?
ないんです。少しだけです。
Because I also did an interview with Manwai.
Manwai,
Yeah,
yes.
and he speaks and writes.
He's far
Japanese,
superior.
Because,
He's far
I mean, he
superior.
was stationed there. He went to
Yes.
university there, and he mentioned that he had to spend 1 year
Learning.
immersion, to learn how to speak the language, because
Correct.
his entire course was conducted in Japanese. So you really have to pick up the language skill.
Yeah.
So that's quite tricky.
And that's something I realized as well, that language essentially it's you need that whole immersion experience. So while we did a lot of studying and writing in the MOE system, but it's only when you went there and you realize that when you're watching the Japanese cartoons, the way they speak Japanese on a day-by-day basis is actually very different from learning it as a language. Yeah, so that was a major eye-opener. And it was great because the Japanese family was very embracing. You can see from the very happy photo.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize I had this photo. It's only when I was trying to find some of the older photos that I found this.
How old were you then? Secondary
Probably
school?
Sec 2 or 3.
During that time, when they were sending students,
Yes.
now they call them field trips or something like that. Is it?
Yeah.
But they don't stay with the families, right? The ones that they go to now, they just go in a whole school.
Correct.
They go there and so-called China or Japan or whatever the school decides to
Nowadays
send
they
them.
go fairly exotic places, I think. I've heard of schools going to Russia and
Wow. Yeah, well,
those with
I guess,
bigger budget.
With bigger budgets, right? Interesting. So how long was this entire experience for you?
About 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, so you had to learn some Japanese before you went over? Or?
We were already studying in Singapore. So when we went there, it was really to live with a Japanese family. And they were also quite interested in showing us the Japanese culture. So that's a picture of me in a kimono.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So what was the most fun part about this immersion culture, Japanese culture thing that you can recall?
The most fun part, I think, was, I think just the experience of living with the family. I remember I was crying my heart out on the last day because
不舍得回来。
不舍得 because you felt like you are part of their family. You're helping them with their daily chores. We went to school together with my host, Yoko. I still remember her name. So
are you still in touch with them?
we wrote letters. So back then there's no emails.
Yeah.
We wrote letters to
Yes,
each other for a while.
It would be
But
so nice if you are still in touch. Right?
Yeah, maybe I should try and find her on
Yeah,
Facebook.
you should try find out.
But there's probably a lot of Yokos.
But
I
if you have
forgot
the family name or something,
Yeah, true.
well, all the best lah. Maybe you might find her. You might find Yoko. Well, the most famous Yoko is Yoko Ono lah, John Lennon's wife. But that's a pretty common Japanese name, eh?
Yeah,
Yoko.
it's but maybe by pictures and common friends we might.
Yeah, you might find her again. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. So that sort of like made you have the travel bug as well, travel.
Yeah, that
learn
sort of
different
started
languages and things like this.
my journey.
Nurtured your.
My rebellious side. If you meet my mom, she'll tell you of all the horror stories that that's never told. Yeah.
Okay, let's see what's your next picture you have. This is another holiday? Or this is in Thailand or Cambodia? Or?
So this is Myanmar before Myanmar even became like a travel destination of sorts. Very, yeah. So somehow there's a part of me that's perpetually curious. So this was another field trip with a Christian group. It started out with the inquisitiveness to find out, so what is Myanmar like? Because back then it was still under a very strict military
you can't
regime.
just go into the country, right? You have to make special arrangements.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but then because it was a workshop, I joined through the workshop.
Oh.
And I still remember on the field trip, they wanted to bring us to visit the villages, right, to find out what the living conditions were like. But because of the strict requirements to register foreigners, which obviously they can't tell them because of the work that we're trying to do on the ground. So they just dressed me up in a longji, which is like their sarong. And I was just put in the back of a truck and told not to say anything. So, but you know, as with Murphy's Law, everyone else didn't get checked, right? All the trucks that went through, but somehow ours was stopped.
Oh my gosh, and how?
I held my breath for like the longest hour in my life.
Your heart must have been poop, 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 poop,
Yeah,
poop.
because these were military guys with guns as well. So they stopped to ask the organizer where we're going to, who's on the truck. And fortunately, because I think back then I was still quite tan, so I probably looked like a local Burmese.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So otherwise, you may not be sitting
my
here
gosh,
talking to me.
what would have been the worst if they had found out that you were not a local? Would they have been thrown in jail or something?
We've heard some stories where people were brought in for questioning and they never knew what happened after that, but there were also some who were just asked questions and released as well.
Wow. Anyway, thank goodness you are safe and sound. If not, you won't be sitting here talking to me now.
Yeah. Luckily, I am very good at holding my breath.
But okay, let's look at the next picture. Where is it? Oh, wow. So many skulls.
Cambodia. So this was a law school field trip with a bunch of my classmates and also my seniors. It was a direct exchange with the law school in Cambodia.
Oh, okay.
And
so this is in Phnom Penh or?
Predominantly in Phnom Penh with the university.
Okay.
So they took us to the killing fields, and that was quite a sobering moment as well, because this is actually a pile of the real skulls, which they found in the mass graves. And but I think, you know, history being history, they're now more prepared to talk about it. But this was also the earlier days where in some of the buildings you may still see the small bullet holes, because they are still trying to recover and they haven't really quite patched out the infrastructure.
Right.
So it's still fairly raw experience, I would say. And also another interesting story involving military men. A senior happened to leave the main group and they went to one of the open areas with statues and monuments. So again, being tourists, they probably took out the cameras wanting to take just pictures of
mementos,
for souvenirs. And it was quite serious because I think maybe Cambodia also wasn't that used to receiving tourists, or were a bit suspicious what people were doing pointing cameras. So they were stopped and asked to hand over their camera.
Oh.
But back then, because cameras are actually quite expensive, so there was a bit of
Did they take the film or what?
I think they just
take the film if they
wanted to, but being Singaporeans, maybe we are not used to being
So
asked to just hand over cameras like that. So there's a bit of a negotiation, and suddenly they pointed the gun at my senior.
Ooh, you were not there,
I wasn't there. I heard this story after they came back, and her whole face was pale when she came back.
Oh, it's a lady, it's a girl.
A lady, yeah. So that's why we asked her, you know, what happened and
was
all
she
of that.
alone or with some of the
It was
other-
actually a very big group. I think there was a smaller group that just went away and wanted to explore a little bit
maybe she
more.
challenged the soldiers. Is it like, why are you taking my camera? I want my camera back.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It could be quite traumatic, you know, to have a gun pointed at you.
Correct.
Wow, so
And,
her face was pale even after she came back.
Yes. So that's why I remember that story.
Probably saw her life flash before her with the gun or the rifle was pointed at.
Yeah, but now ASEAN is very tourist friendly
Yeah,
and
of course.
good neighbors. So these are the earlier days where it's
When
still a
things
bit
were
more
still a bit more
uncertain.
conservative.
Yeah,
And
a bit
they were
more
unsure.
uncertain.
Maybe they saw taking the job, she's a like foreign press or what, trying
Correct,
to write
correct.
bad press about the
Correct.
country and things like this.
Correct.
Sometimes it's due to misunderstanding.
Perhaps
And maybe
as well.
she wasn't so subtle. Maybe she just wanted, so I mean, I wasn't there. I'm just guessing. If not, there was no reason. And plus, she's a girl. Why would they point a gun at her?
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the next picture you have. And wow, another trip again, huh? How come this one got
Okay,
like voting slips or something?
so my travels in the earlier days had been around Asia, and I think, you know, I got to know friends here and there, and they got involved on the ground level with supporting one of the candidates. Still remember an Indian lady, a female candidate, in the earlier days of the Reformasi in Malaysia.
Oh, this is Malaysian.
This is Malaysia.
Because the symbol look like almost one of the
Yes.
the parties in Singapore.
So I think that's the earliest foray or experience I had of ground participation in politics. Just being an observer, no doubt, but seeing how they were trying to engage the ground with flyers. I still remember one night we were brought to a rubber plantation in Malaysia just to do their outreach and try to understand what are the issues. And I think it's a real concern over there because in Singapore it's actually comparatively straightforward, I would say, because most of the residents stay in HDB blocks or condos and a small percentage in landed houses. But you imagine in Malaysia, people are living in plantations, in kampongs. So the geographical terrain can actually be quite tough. So on this night, when we went down to the plantation, I still remember it was a fairly huge... yeah, because they only had kerosene lamps. So Indian family was there with a lot of children. So the good thing is that the plantation owners would support them with housing and education. But when it comes to work, it's pretty much almost 24/7. Yeah. So when they were asked about, you know, the issues, of course, a lot of it was about poverty and concerns about education for their children. And when they're asked why they are not able to just go out and vote, because we take it as a natural right? And we even celebrate because there's a bit of a public holiday for Singaporeans. But for them, it's real issues of, it's either you forfeit the day's wage to go out maybe to the town or city to cast your vote, or basically you're held back because you are staying in a plantation which is a bit remote.
Not accessible
Not
for them
that
to
accessible.
go and do voting and all these things.
Yeah.
Well, Singaporeans also don't get to vote sometimes because a lot of walkovers.
Yeah, that's a different issue, but
I mean, when we say about voting, cannot vote down there is because of inaccessibility, difficult to get out or lose a day's wage. Singaporeans get to vote because a lot of walkover.
Yeah, we have a natural
so
selection.
That was your first foray into
Yes.
seeing how this. So that may have kindled the fire in you a little bit, right?
Again, I think it's all looking back because I didn't even know I had these photos until I looked through some of the older albums.
Yeah, so
because back then I was experimenting a
good
bit
that you
with.
come for this interview, go and dig,
So I must thank you. And I remember the atmosphere because everyone had that hope about reformasi. That was the first episode when Anwar was alleged to have committed sodomy and he was charged. So the wife stepped up. So it was also that process of seeing female leaders stepping up, rallying the countries to do something for the people. And on the streets, I still remember there were vehicles with flags. And if you had a flag of an opposition party or, you know, for the Reformasi banner, people would honk at each other in solidarity. So it was actually quite fun, and
it's a bit more vibrant, right, in Malaysia in the political
scene. Yes, you feel
right?
that commitment to wanting to make a change, at least amongst the Malaysian friends. So that was quite interesting experience.
So what is the next picture you have prepared for us? Let's see. Oh, that's you.
Yeah, that's
graduating from law school.
Yes.
When were you admitted to the bar?
If I tell you, you can count my age, so I can't. I won't get tricked by that question.
Anyway, you look very useful, don't worry. You look very useful. So that was, you graduated from NUS, right?
Yes, from NUS.
But you especially in what in IP, right? Or law or something?
Yeah, so back then I think I had a bit of journey because usually for the younger graduates, you would try and figure out, do you want to do litigation, which is predominantly court work, or maybe more of a corporate conveyancing sort of progression in terms of career. I think there's always two sides to me. One is the really active and I want to chiong and fight for justice in court. Yeah. But I also enjoy a bit of that corporate exposure. Right. So I started out in one of the bigger firms in Singapore, in Wong Partnership, and I was quite, I think it was the right time and the right opportunity where there was opening in both departments, so I was given that inroad to figure out if I would choose one over the other. But over time, I was still quite conflicted, I think. So it was only by chance that I somehow ended up doing IP in Raja and Tan.
Oh, okay. Because I have my niece who's also a lawyer. She graduated about maybe 3-4 years ago. And it's like the song that comes to mind, right? when I think of the way she works, right? It's been a hard day's
Oh, yeah.
night,
Yeah.
and I've been working like a dog. It's like no joke one, like serious why study so hard and then graduate lawyer and then wow, bojit bo mei one, you know.
Correct. That's like
It's crazy.
the baptism of 5 years.
No balance kind of thing there.
So if you survive it, then that's the real qualifier and actually not the bar.
So that's your baptism of fire.
That's a baptism of fire, because I remember in Wong Partnership, they used to have an office at Tiong Bahru Plaza. And because we have to work through weekends, so we would comfort ourselves by going to the supermarket to buy ice cream and store in the pantry.
So
and
you
then the
treat
few
yourself
of
lah
us,
when you-
yeah.
to cheer yourself
So
up a
we will
bit,
feed each other
you know.
quite well to keep us going through the
okay,
nights and the weekends.
Oh, interesting. Oh, so that's your, so yeah, you specialize more in IP now lah.
So there was a little bit of a story to it as well, because I ended up in a smaller firm after Wong Partnership, and it happened that my boss took on fairly interesting work. So we got to do the IP licensing rights for KOD. So that's a karaoke on-demand system, if you still remember.
KOD, yes, yes.
So they used to have the disc jockeys, right, in the earlier days. Then it became computerized. So what happened is that our client basically aggregated all the rights from your Warner Records, your
the different labels.
EMI, and we had to try and persuade all the pubs and clubs to pay our client the licensing fees.
Oh, okay.
But you can imagine all the...
Is it a Compass or what?
No, it's not Compass.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a private group.
Private group, okay.
So you can imagine that, you know, from your smallest one-man show, the KTV little clubs in the neighborhoods, to your country clubs, because they also have KOD facilities,
bigger,
to your really big nightclubs. So I think the bigger boys try to challenge us.
They don't want to pay.
Yeah.
I might bring them to court.
So it's actually quite fun, because we worked with the IPRB, which is the Intellectual Property Rights branch of the police side.
Oh.
So we did private enforcement. So I still remember.
You have to go and raid places.
So it's interesting, because when we went to one of the bigger nightclubs, they think that we are there to Sao Huang, because they also had the hostesses there. So you'll see all these.
Vice unit.
Yeah, so it's a bit like the Hong Kong triads, right? So you see all the girls rushing to the toilets because they were trying to hide from us.
Yeah.
But actually what we wanted was just a computer, because all the songs were stored there.
But you all did it with the assistance of the police, or you just went on your own?
So it's a joint raid in that sense.
So the police were there.
With the police, because they would
they saw police.
enforce it, and then we have to check that yes, all these song titles belong to our clients.
Can't blame them, as I said. Maybe they saw the police, they thought it's a vice raid, so all the girls run.
So you can imagine when I walk into the ladies' toilet, they all stare at me with horror.
你来抓我，你来抓我。
对。So
手下留情，手下留情。
yeah, then you know, I'll try and tell them, but I can't really talk to them. So by gesture, I said, you know, it's not what you think.
Okay, relax.
And then literally, because we are holding this computer system on ransom, because they can't start their business until they pay. So you'll see the boss going behind the cashiers and literally counting the hundreds to pay us.
On the spot, they pay your cash? I mean, this doesn't have to go to court.
I mean, these are the big KTV bar owners. So they have the resources, but it's their way of sometimes
avoid paying the whatever fees that they have to use the thing. So it's like, you know, free one. Just ignore until
so because correct.
Yeah, usually
so,
it's like that.
So it's quite fun. And then my boss also took out a case involving the thumb drive. You know, our regular thumb drive. It's actually a Singapore patent.
Really?
So a Singapore company actually owns the rights to our thumb drive, and they were trying to enforce it. So that case got fought all the way to the highest appellate court in Singapore. So I was involved at the highest appellate stage. So that was a very good learning experience. So after a few years of all that work experience accumulated on the IP front, incidentally, I think Raja and Tan back then was looking for some of experience, and that's when, I did a job switch.
So you are working still with Raja and Tan, or who are you working with now?
No, so I was with them for about 9 years.
Wow, that's quite a long time.
Yeah. So a fair part of my career was spent with them.
Okay. But you're still focusing on your IP, like because of your background and your research into
Still
that area?
fairly much. So we did a lot of interesting cases as well, a mix of rates and IP licensing work and all of that. There was another case we did. It was quite memorable because there were seizures of cordyceps.
Okay. 冬虫草.
冬虫草. And the interesting part I still remember was because at the time when they seized it, it was a particular value. But by the end of the case, I think maybe 2 or 3 years later, the price shot up so much.
How do you...
They actually made more money, after
trying to sell the thing.
Possibly, I think so.
Okay, wow, very interesting. Sometimes you think that law is so boring, right? But from your angle, the way you share with us your stories, so many, different...
Yeah, because I think for IP, it deals with many different subject areas. And because of changing technology, so the area of law that you try to apply to the subject matter, that's always evolving in a sense, in the way that you interpret the law. Whereas land law, it's more or less there for the last 50, 100 years, so it's quite different.
So they say that a robot can take over some of the lawyers' work, especially in the areas of conveyancing and all this.
For maybe some of the more routine aspects of legal work.
So unless like what you are doing a bit more specialized, or you go to court litigation.
But next time they might also invent an AI to do rates.
Cannot, the robot too slow to react.
I am here.
Yeah. I'll be back.
I'll be back.
Okay, very interesting. What's the next photo you have? What is this?
So
Reuters. Wow, ADB. You were working with Reuters?
A little bit of a snapshot to the work. So apart from the rates, the IP licensing, going to court, I've done a bit of writing for Housebury Law, and along the way, I've also been involved recently in one of the committees, and what they try to do is this initiative called Brands for Good.
Brands for Good.
Yeah, so they try and recognize the SMEs in Singapore as well as in the region, which are bringing good initiatives to the ground, but also providing employment at the same time.
But all SMEs need a lot of help, especially.
Yes. And it's an encouragement for people to proactively think of how they can contribute to society, but also build a business around it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, with the Asian Development Bank, again, another interesting project. They were back then trying to fund this organization. They was trying to create one of the first IP exchange in Asia. So what they tried to do was to bring technology from US and Europe and to find buyers from around Asia to do a bit of a matchmaking. So fairly varied. And Reuters was because of an interview I did with them. Remember there was this small episode about the Dallas Buyers Club.
What Buyers Club?
It's this Hollywood movie, and there were lots of infringement in terms of the downloads, and they managed to track down some of the illegal infringers. So I have people calling me to say that, excuse me, Miss Low, my gardener was found with to have served this letter of demand about the Dallas Buyers Club. So what should I do about it? But we know it's them. And so we gave a little bit of advice around that situation. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So,
but what's your schedule like for you as a lawyer? Do you have to work crazy hours as well, or is it more sane now for yourself?
So, like I said, in the earlier years, you kind of have to prove that you can survive the baptism of fire. But when you're at a more senior level, at a partner's level, then it's a bit like army, right? You survive it, and then you try and train your recruits to go through that. But I think by my time, we try to be nice to our associates as well. So it's more collaborative.
Interesting. Okay, let's see. What is this?
Another project we did.
The songs we sang.
Yeah, so back in 2015-16, this was one of the documentaries locally made that was also cited in a National Day rally. So it's a friend, but she was also the director of this film.
Oh, it's a film?
Yeah.
Is it cinema or for TV?
It was shown through Golden Village for a period of time. And back then, what they were trying to document is the Sing Yao history of Singapore. So it started with the closing of Nanta because there was a change of policy to encourage graduates to move into the English university. I mean, back then would be NUS.
Yeah.
And so with that, it's also a shift in terms of the depth of understanding of the Mandarin language, because your Chinese-speaking community are now shifted. So in that process, there was a lot of sentimental values that's attached to poetry writing, songwriting. So that whole community from your Eric Moo grew up from there, right?
Yeah.
And that's how the Sing Yao movement was actually born. So it was actually a very interesting documentary.
Yeah.
And I remember in the tail end of it, they were also trying to find out the current Singaporean singers like your JJ Lin, your Stephanie Sun, how they related back to that movement and what's their thoughts about the current Singapore music making industry.
So it's like a documentary, slightly documentary style?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So
talking about this one, Sing Yao, just trigger me to ask you a question. What is your dialect group?
Cantonese, Hokkien. So my mother's side is Cantonese, my dad's side is Hokkien.
So that means no one ever asked you what's your father tongue, right?
No,
So
it's
they
always the
ask you
mother tongue.
So you speak Cantonese, ah?
Yeah.
Still fluent or?
Có得去啊。
仲唔錯啦，你啲廣東話啦。OK 啦。
可以
因為呢個年紀咧，好多都唔識講廣東話嘅喎。
係啊，可以叫啲點心食啊。
慢慢地啦。
蝦餃、燒賣、叉燒包。
講啊，又 OK 啦，都係唔錯啦，嗬。
唔錯。
Because you know I learn my Canton. I'm a Hakka. I'm Hakka, but I can speak most of the dialect except Hainanese because in the kampung I grew up with no Hainan people there.
Yes.
And then the Cantonese was learned from watching all those Hong Kong
TVB
dramas.
series.
Yeah. Okay,
correct.
let's see what's the next thing you
So,
have there.
so that film was interesting for us as well, because after that I got quite close to the working crew, and I still remember they were invited to be featured in the Taipei Golden Horse Film Festival.
The same movie just now, the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you won something? Did you win anything?
They got featured.
Oh,
so it was an interesting step because it's for a Singaporean-made documentary to be featured in 金马银奖.
So Golden Horse, okay.
Yeah, the Golden Horse. That's like the equivalent of our Mandarin.
So to be featured there is really considered an achievement, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I went down with the crew to Taipei. Had a lot of fun. Yeah.
Wow. So you've been having too much fun, girl. All over the place.
So it's whoever wants to do IP
you
law.
A lawyer to go on for all these sort of things.
Yeah. So whoever wants to do IP law, this is a bit of a recruitment call. You never know where you end up, right?
It's not so one-dimensional, you know.
It isn't.
Go and do police raid, go for film festivals and things like this. Okay. Any other pictures after this? Who's that? Is that you?
Sema, yeah.
Oh la la.
This is a L'Oreal campaign.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the one time.
That was like what, 1 year ago?
No, that was 2013 or 14 maybe.
Oh, wow. So excuse me, are you a model? Do people ever come up to you and say?
No, I is not. But I knew a friend whose wife was in the editorial for this magazine. So I think they wanted to feature women from different walks of life. So she happened to know that I was a lawyer.
Right.
So
you never thought of going into modeling part-time or whatever?
No,
just for
you need too much photo editing to make me look this good.
Hey, makeup can do wonders,
So it was to help a friend because it was a bit of a last-minute request as well. But again, quite fun because we got to see behind the scenes. And it's actually a lot of work, you know. A lot of times we flip through our magazine thinking that, it's just another pretty face.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of crew involved, there's a lot of coordination. And even then they had to get us to write our little own script to share with the women out there what we think beauty is. So it's quite an interesting campaign.
Was this a one-off thing or?
Yeah, it was a one-off. I didn't get further calls after that. So.
The problem is because you didn't have an agent. You need to get an agent, someone to push you into the
so
market.
maybe if you were my agent, I get more gigs like that. So.
Probably now you won't even have the time. But I mean, it was a fun thing to
it was quite an
something
experience.
that you don't normally get to do.
Yes.
What's the next picture you have for us?
So...
What is this?
So this was
Project
a fairly
Audible
recent project. Again, I think a lot of my projects, I it's always through friends of friends of friends. So this is a good friend who came to me saying that she was quite concerned during the COVID period about elderlies who are living alone, or they may not have immediate family visiting them for about 2 months or so. So she wanted to initiate this project where she would be buying the MP3 radio, but they're going to insert and upload pre-recorded music and a bit of talk shows. So it's to bring back that rediffusion era. Yes.
Because they are the seniors, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I guess who can help? IP lawyer, right? That's where I came in useful.
So that you all don't break any rules and kena fine or whatever, is it?
I think the content was mainly handled by another friend of hers, but it was just to go through some of the MOUs that she had to sign.
Right. Also, it was to bring cheer, as you said, audible cheer
Cheer
right?
to the
elderly
elderly
living
crowd.
by themselves. Yeah. Because being lonely is a terrible scourge. Actually.
It is. And while a lot of people were thinking of distributing masks and computers and food, but I think very few were thinking about emotional need. Yeah, so that was actually quite a meaningful
radios did you manage to give out, this MP3 radio or whatever?
I don't have the exact number. I think they were trying, I think initially they were targeting around 6,000.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow, so you managed to do some good fundraising to raise the money to
Yeah, so concurrently there was fundraising initiatives, there was a bit of that background legal issue. But after a while, because we're good friends, then it would be the other logistics as well. So overnight she had to find those songbooks folder to slot in the lyrics for the elderly to sing along.
Wow.
So I had to get an aunt.
A lot of work actually,
yeah, to prepare 600 folders, and then she brought it down.
Wow.
So
is this still ongoing, or has it stopped?
It is ongoing.
It's ongoing.
It is
still.
ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kudos to you all for bringing cheer as you work there to the seniors. Let's see now, what's the next picture you have for us? And what is this? A bit dark.
So another outreach that myself and my husband has been doing, but we don't generally take photos. So this is footage from online.
What is this? A homeless person or what?
Yeah, and an interesting story that started us as well, because we are with a Tibetan temple. So one day the teacher basically told us that there was a lot of offerings in terms of fruits and biscuits. So we're just told to bring it to the ground to give it to those who need them. So I still remember late at night we went to a city fringe area. And honestly, while we've been giving food to old folks' home and all of that, it was, for me, the first time I saw the homeless in Singapore. Because in the Singaporean part of me, I'm always raised to think that the homeless are either taken care of or they don't really exist because we don't really see them.
You're a compassionate person, or you think of the people who are...
I think that was my Tibetan teacher's way of getting us to really see the suffering on the ground. So, yeah, and I realized one of the reasons why the average Singaporean may not have seen them, because they are also trying to avoid the authorities. So in the daytime, they will be probably walking around with their little belongings, but it's the nighttime when you see them laying out their cardboards, or if you see them trying to rest on the bench in the...
So they are the unseen people, in that sense, right? In one of the richest countries in the world, we still have people who are homeless, sleeping on the streets, whatever forced them or caused them to become in this situation, which is sad. Do you have any idea what the numbers like?
The last survey done was around 1,000, and they're actually all over Singapore. So, most of them I think are in the city fringe area, but a number of them are also in parts like Bedok, Woodlands.
So they're all over the island, But 1,000, is that considered small or in the Singapore context, or compared to other countries?
Well, I say if you look at total population size of Singaporeans, that's about 3 million plus minus. Yeah, but I would suppose it's the situation of them being there when we should have the resources to support them.
So why do these people fall through the cracks? I mean, is there no agency that can help them, or what? Or they refuse help?
So there are many different stories. Some of them are the working poor, and you'll be surprised that a lot of them are not jobless in that sense. So they might be working as security guards, or they might be working as cleaners. So that's a good number of them. And one of the reasons they might be sleeping out is because of accessibility to work. So say for example, if they work in the city area, rather than to go home to say Tampines or Jurong at the end of the day.
But to sleep on the street, then what? How do they shower? What? Clean themselves?
I think the good part about Singapore is that there's a number of public facilities like your toilets and all that. So
you do outreach to these people lah.
Yeah, we have done a little bit of that.
Oh, okay.
So it's after they get to know you, they will start sharing their stories. So that's one group, the working poor. And it was interesting as well because we realized that they are literally working on a day-by-day basis. So if they don't work that day, for some of them, there's literally no food. And there's actually an interesting exchange, again, on the city fringe, where you have people going out there to say, oh, today I need 10 workers to be cleaners at this particular site. So they would crowd around these four men. Yeah, so they have to queue. And I think
it's a daily thing?
It's a daily thing. So well, jobs are limited, right? So
so you feel for them lah.
Yeah, I mean the disappointment when they walk away, or so it's a day-by-day basis.
Yeah, so you okay, I understand where you are coming from, you know. You feel for them lah, in the sense of working under those kind of situations and thinking that something like this that happened in the past is still happening in today's context, right?
Context.
It's quite incredible, isn't it, when you think about
it?
Why are humanity still being subjected to such kind of conditions?
But there's only so much you can do just giving food or a little bit of support.
So maybe that was one of the impetus that also made you want to step forward lah, huh?
Yes.
With PSP, right? To do something more than just, you know,
just giving basic
some
necessities.
Basic necessities. Okay, kudos to you, girl. Power. All right, let's look at the
Maybe
next.
one day you can join us. There
I would
are
love
lots
to do
of
that.
interesting
I would love
ground
to do that.
stories.
I have done some outreach programs as well.
Yes.
I'm more like I help charitable organizations raise funds. I'm a professional fundraiser.
So you are the money guy?
Yeah, not really the money guy. I help them to maximize their fundraising efforts.
That's very important.
I cheekily call myself the professional beggar.
we need lots of that.
Yeah. And what about this one? Oh, this is what, selling veggies?
Yeah, so another initiative. This is more to do with food waste. So while we went to the ground, we also saw people literally scraping for food. So on the one hand, you may have a provision shop owner who's throwing away the ugly vegetables for the day, right? And on the other hand, you see people scrapping for food from the same bin.
Oh, wow.
So then I got to learn of various initiatives in Singapore doing food rescue, and I joined in some of their walks where they will go down to Pasir Panjang warehouse where they do the food distribution. So that's where you also see on the ground that a lot of food is actually wasted. So before they even come to your supermarkets, you would see bins of lettuces or onions or food that's just discarded because they don't look good enough for your supermarket.
So the wastage, they rather throw it away lah.
Yes.
So what do you do? You take it, make it nice, and
we don't really make it nice in a particular sense. So
at least you don't have to go and dig from the bin, right? And that's what I mean by making it nice. At least
actually, there are different initiatives. So some have really gone to the bins. This one is more through the food distribution center. We would gather food that they are prepared to give away to us, and some would be shared with beneficiaries like charity groups which are feeding, say, the cardboard collectors or people living in rental homes. And others, they might be just shared amongst the volunteers because some of them also have the mindset of not wasting food.
So these are perishables, right? Is storage an issue? Or you are, whenever you collect, you distribute
some
out
of
the
the
same
groups
day?
were the first initiators of this idea of as well, of putting mini fridges at HDB blocks.
Yes, I read about that.
Yes,
Yeah.
so they will deposit then whatever the residents need, they can take as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's quite fun because sometimes on the WhatsApp chats you would see people ask for help to eat, right? Because you have so much excess food.
Yeah.
Or people would use the ugly vegetables and turn them into really nice looking cuisine and share it with the group. So that's also quite encouraging.
Right. I mean, it's a sad thing, right? That thing is still fit for human consumption. Just because it's not so pretty,
Yes.
or dented or something, or bruised, and then they throw it away. When there are people out there who actually need something like this.
Yes. So.
Oh, okay. Let's
So
look at the next picture. It's just amazing that you have done so much for this thing. And who is this? With a cat or lion face or tiger face, whatever.
So I feel that, again, whenever opportunities arise, this was another drive by a friend to create an exciting carnival for children. From different homes and all that. Okay. So they had like cotton candy stands, they had face painting, they had games and sing-along. So we just asked to go as volunteers. And I think from there I realized that I bond quite well with young children. So that also prompted a lot of different projects and
you
outreaches.
become a very good mommy,
When it's my time, hopefully.
When it's your time, yeah. Okay, I'm
when
sure.
It's my time, yeah.
I'm sure because you have the inclination, as you say, you bond well with kids and things like this. Okay, let's look at the next picture you have. And this is
so, like I said, that led on to this project in Mongolia.
This is in Mongolia.
This is in Mongolia at 9 p.m. or thereabouts at night.
Wow.
Because they're summer, they actually have extremely long days.
Oh.
So I still remembered we were, because they're quite curious about phones and the ability to take selfies. So we were just fooling around taking selfies while waiting for rest time.
Was this a holiday or some mission trip that you were on?
So it's part of a journey when I wanted to go on this trans-Siberian journey across Mongolia, Russia. Yeah. So,
these are not
incidentally,
disadvantaged kids,
They are from homes and orphanages, but every summer what happens is that they would be brought to the countryside of Mongolia. And I happen to know through my friend, her Singaporean friend who was based there in Ulaanbaatar. So we connected through a few emails and she said, they actually needed international volunteers for that summer camp. So that was how I joined them for a week, camping out at the Mongolian countryside.
Interesting.
It actually looks quite warm, but at night it's freezing. I remember I had my sleeping bags and all of that.
Okay. Also good for you. I mean, you try to kill two birds with one stone, right? You go for a holiday, but yet at the same time, you try to incorporate humanitarian work that you are doing based on what resonates to you. And I think if more people can do that, right, rather than just holiday, shopping, eating, there's not enough malls in Singapore to spend that kind of effort.
I think it's probably from the earlier days when I'm also interested in just understanding the regular lives of people who live in those countries apart from seeing the monuments. So it's from there that you realize that, like winter in Mongolia is really harsh. So for a lot of the people living even in Ulaanbaatar, which is the main city, there are so-called bath houses for the slums where you have to walk to a bathhouse to take a shower, right? Or a lot of them would still be lighting their burners at home using firewood. And to some extent, I think one thing that was shared is that alcoholism is a huge problem. So a fair number of domestic violence, which is why some of these kids may be brought to homes as well.
Okay. All right, let's look at what's the next picture you have up here, and what is this?
So this
Korea.
is like you got it.
North Korea.
It is.
Oh.
So I like off-beaten track travel. I had this fascination with North Korea for a while.
I don't think it's fascination. I think you have a passion.
And one thing about me is I like to travel and combine a few purposes. So I like to travel for festivals as well. So this is the Arirang festival in North Korea, which is their version of maybe a bit of like our NDP, where they try and instill patriotism and showing a bit of their military tanks and equipment.
How do you get into North Korea? It's not like the most easily accessible place in the world, no?
It isn't. So I got a friend who was equally interested, and she's quite good with the internet and resources. So she managed to connect with this agent who's based out of China. And this agent, according to him, tells us that he drinks regularly with the officials from North Korea because they stay on a border town. So he was quite confident of getting us the visa. And so we went along, and it was interesting going via the Chinese borders because we then realized that to the rest of the world, North Korea was this forbidden country, right?
Yeah.
And no one knows a lot about it. But for a lot of the Chinese people, it's probably their equivalent of going into JB for us. Because they are literally a border away.
Yeah, just across,
yes.
crossover.
And they are friendly to each other. There are, of course, PRC Chinese who are also very curious about North Korea, but for them, the accessibility is actually not that difficult. So that's how
you didn't face any problems at immigration?
No, it was quite smooth.
Because you had all the proper papers and everything?
We had proper documentation. We spoke Mandarin as well, so we looked like part of the
是
PRC.
中国人啊。
对，我们是中国人。
只是你的护照是新加坡的护照嘛？
对。
他没有问你们来这里做什么 ，but do they speak Mandarin there or do they speak in North Korea? Or do they
So
speak
in North Korea, you can only go to places with a designated guide. And so the guide spoke fluent Mandarin. So we were able to understand whatever she was explaining about the culture and
You're talking about the
history.
North Korean guide?
Yes, the North Korean guide.
Okay, interesting.
So that was a
long
memorable
were you there?
experience. About 5 days. It was actually quite expensive as well. So I went for
when
the.
you go off beaten track one, you got to pay a bit more.
So I went for the mid-tier itinerary.
And this is in North Korea?
So, yeah, again, some footages online because I didn't take very good photos for that trip, but just interesting recollections of that trip. So, one, North Korea produces excellent beer.
Really?
Really.
Their own
North Korean beer.
Oh, okay.
And we are told, again by the guy, one of the reasons is that their water is unpolluted. And their grain is unpolluted because they don't have industrial agriculture. So it actually tastes very light and crisp if you like, the lighter beers. So that was one memory. The other was
is it
of
the what? Traffic or police officer or the traffic warden, the lady in white?
Yeah, so the other interesting story we were told is that they would actually select pretty girls to be traffic women in North Korea because they need to get the driver's attention, which I presume are usually men, to look at the traffic women to be in the right side of traffic.
Okay. I learned something new today.
Yes. So it's through travel, I think, and through local stories that you learn of all these interesting insights.
Okay. Any more photos coming up for North Korea, or do we move on to another country destination?
If you want to hear more stories, we can.
Yeah, okay. Anyway,
this is another trip to Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan.
I had this other fascination with eagle hunting. And at first I wanted to do it during that Mongolian trip, but because there was a limited visa of 30 days for Singaporeans, I was doing a lot of different projects.
This is your Trans-Siberian trip, is it, or what?
Yes, so I ran out of time on my visa, and it wasn't the right timing for their eagle hunting season yet. So it was a later part of the trip where I had two options. It's either I make another route back to Mongolia, or I try and find another avenue, because eagle hunting is actually quite popular in the Central Asian countries as well.
Central Asian Republic. So what were the two guys standing on the horse? Is that how they ride the horse, or they're just showing off?
A bit of both.
Okay.
So it's interesting
so what,
because
did you actually hold the eagle, or was it too heavy for you to let the eagle stand on your hand?
So that's in the next photo. I wasn't really. I think the guy didn't trust me to hold his precious eagle because it's their means of hunting. It is a craft that's passed down from their ancestors, so they regard it with the highest respect. So, but of course, in summertime, they may come out to earn a bit of money from the tourists who are curious, but it is part of their day-to-day.
Wow, okay, what's the next one after this?
And
wow, this is what?
So this was an interesting gathering in that community, which I found out. And you know, polo, we just ride horses and try and hit, right? But
hit the ball,
for them, they actually used a sheep.
Oh, they tried to grab that sheep, is it? I think I've seen it on documentaries
yes,
before.
so they would first decapitate the sheep, and they will use the body as part of the sport.
Like you try to score a goal, right?
By putting the sheep, so it's competitive, and they will try and have to race and put it into the sport. So it's like a combination of, I think, soccer and polo, maybe. But I remembered because...
Did someone follow, like, in the picture?
Again, an online footage. I didn't manage to capture it as well because it was very fast moving.
Right.
But I remembered I was with another French lady because we were both going for this festival, and we were discussing why is it so cruel, right? Like, can't they just use a sack of potatoes?
It probably is easier to get a lamb or a sheep than a sack of potatoes, you know, probably in that kind of place, right?
So I think the local guide overheard us, and maybe to show us the real deal, they put the live sheep in the back of our boot and took us to the side. So I remembered the poor sheep was still bleating and probably knows that it's coming to its end. And I remember we both kept fairly quiet throughout that journey because it's not usual for us, again, living the CD, to have experienced a livestock being killed and used for different purposes. So
correct.
That was
talking about sheep, right? You have to remind someone cotton don't come from sheep.
Yeah, maybe I should share this picture with him.
So let's look at it. Oh, this is you getting that with mommy?
Yeah, my mom. So I think my mom was happy that there was someone who's finally prepared to tame me, right? And not do all these wild and adventurous things.
But it's not a bad thing, I mean, to have that spirit of adventure, to travel.
But I think to a mom, she's always concerned about the baby girl.
So your 老公, he never show his face.
He asked to be kept private.
You're so private.
He's very camera shy.
You better tell your 老公, when you become an MP, he cannot be so private anymore.
He's very camera shy, but
okay. We are not going to force him to reveal himself,
yes, so he shall remain mysterious.
Okay, and this was what?
So
your mommy is Peranakan, or you just happen to dress up?
So the interesting story is I always had a fascination for everything Peranakan. I did a traditional thing, so I went to extend my wedding invitations to my relatives, and it's only with one of the aunties that she shared with me that, actually there's this bridal chest of my great-grandmother back from the days when she was about to get married, and that's when she shared the whole, what do you call that, 家谱, your family...
Heirloom, like a...
like a record of your family's ancestry and the names of all your relatives. And that's when I realized that my paternal side, so my grandfather's mother, is actually a true blue Peranakan.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see you're in a kebaya, you know, it's with the krongsang in front and all that. The beaded slippers and everything that. It's the real deal, you know. It's
my little chance to relive the 小娘惹 dream. But
okay, excellent. Let's look at the next picture. And
so after all of that settling down, I thought it's domestic life. But then it took for an interesting turn where, through a mutual friend, I got to know Dr. Tan as well. That's when he first started Progress Singapore Party, and he said he needed some help, and so we joined as volunteers. So
together with your husband, he's supporting you in this decision?
Yes, the mysterious husband.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Who's also not in this photo.
Oh, well, okay. So it's important that at least the spouses, you all must support each other's decision, you know, and things like that. That's wonderful. Okay. Oh, this is a picture.
So that's in one of the party gatherings at Dr. Tan's house, I believe. where we were welcoming the new members to join.
Okay.
With
Excellent.
Mrs. Tan and some of the other members. Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. Are we almost at the end?
Yeah.
What is that?
My
Kitty
cat.
cat? Oh, you own a cat? Oh, okay.
So nowadays, apart from politics, my other hobby, especially in the COVID lockdown, I kind of stalk my cat at home and take selfies. So
Oh, okay.
this is my parting shot.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at the end. So perhaps you want to tell our viewers, right? I mean, you have shared this journey. What may be some of your, your hopes, dreams, and aspirations? Because I asked every one of the person I interview, what are some of your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations for Singapore society going forward?
So I think for myself, having shared a bit of my work experience and some of the ground outreaches that I've done, there's a very strong sense of justice, I think, that I bring from my work. So having seen the inequalities, the injustices on the ground, I feel that there is a voice that I can give to those who are not able to speak for themselves. Remember the group of workers who are struggling even to find a day's work, so not to mention about talking about their problems. And also I think thinking back personally for my dad, who has gone through his ups and downs in his businesses, for my mom, while she was working for an MNC at that point, but also through retrenchment. My family has gone through some severe hardship. So I imagine that in the current times for COVID, there are a lot of small businesses which are struggling. There are lots of people who are facing retrenchment. And if I can lend a voice to these people out there, if I can help them articulate their concerns, to speak up about their little injustices, I think I've had a fairly enriching life experience. I would like to be that voice, to bring that concern to a different platform where we can hopefully make some changes together.
All right, wonderful. So hope you get, become an MP one day. Huh?
Well, I'm happy to do support work also.
It doesn't matter, but anyway, so thank you very much, Wendy, for coming to the studio, and we'd like to thank all our viewers for joining us today, and I hope you have all got to know Wendy a little bit better, and if you want to go for holiday next time, you can chill her lah.
Yeah.
Please not to the normal places, she goes for exotic trips.
And must be willing to budget travel.
So there you have it, Craig here signing off, until the next time, and we see you with another PSP candidate. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye.